You gotta be active.
I'm fine. How's the vacation?
And I got that.
Right, with it being right at 6 o'clock, let's get started here. Jolene, will you please take roll?
Council members Erickson,
Present?
Larson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Valento. Here. Mayor Roberts.
Here, and if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, we have an agenda in front of us. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda minus item 9A to be removed per the request of the developer.
Also move to approve the agenda with the removal of items 9A.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. Next item, awards and recognitions. So as many know, the city suffered a devastating and heartbreaking loss with an off-duty passing of Detective Joshua Brown on August 11th from an unknown medical event. Detective Brown was hired by the Forest Lake Police Department on October 28th, 2017. He served as a patrol officer, use of force instructor, range instructor, and most recently assigned to the Washington County Drug Force and SWAT team. He was an outstanding police officer and was a great friend to many in the police department and the community. There was a fantastic turnout at the visitation and the funeral on Monday and Tuesday of last week, which showed how many lives he truly touched. He is survived by his wife, Jennifer, 4 children, and 1 grandchild. We'd like to thank a number of law enforcement agencies that stepped up and helped our department and patrol our roads during that time. Those were Cottage Grove Police Department, Woodbury Police Department, Oakdale Police Department, Stillwater, and Washington County. This was really appreciated and really hit home for me personally when that evening going to Arts in a Park and seeing a Stillwater and Woodbury patrol officer doing the beat for our guys when they were really having a tough day. It was an emotional time for everyone in the city, and where it really hit me personally is after walking out of the church at the funeral, Councilman Erickson was able to attend with me, and seeing our officers truly suffering and how close they were to this individual. And it really did show that he was more than just a partner and a coworker, but a true friend. Please join the council for a moment of silence in honor of Detective Joshua Brown and appreciation for his dedication to the service of our city. Thank you. All right, our next item here, open forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak, come to speak to the council. Please give us your name and address and limit it to around 3 minutes. Eugene Hurstel.
Eugene Hurstel, 10234 204th Street. I would just like to, part of the pickleball group again, appreciate what has been happening. A couple years ago, there wasn't much communication, but then we were able to get communication from Jamie and stuff, and it really improved things, and that we want to work together with it. And it's culminated now to even more cooperation, and Kyle, we really appreciate Kyle too, and how he goes back and forth. And then we've got Don here, who's a great mentor for all of us, and works hard for the parks and trails and stuff. And so we are very pleased what's been going on, and wanted everybody to know that. And like, of course, Alan's not here, but with the fire department and all that, putting that together and stuff. And it's going great guns out there. Hannah, get your paddle. Jolene, get your paddle. But Mr. Erickson, he's been there, but we're gonna get him again. But anybody else, come on out, and it's a great time of social, and we got plenty of good people that'll make you feel wanted, okay? Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak this evening? All right, with no one else coming forward, I'm looking for approval of this evening's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda item 7A through I.
I'll second.
Motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a consent agenda. Our first regular agenda item, 8A, ordinance revisions, and Abby.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts, members of the council. As the council may remember, last year we started a zoning code update project where we created a new architecture for our zoning code. And the intent then was to go through the zoning code in kind of section by section to clean up the code for consistency, for ease of use, consolidation. Earlier this year, our former planner, Ken Roberts, and a consulting planner, Claire Stickler, had worked with the Planning Commission on consolidating the landscape standards in our zoning code. Just for reference, landscaping was in a few different places. The intent of the architecture amendment was to pull it all into one place and now take those words, jumble them up, get rid of what we didn't need to, reformat it. So included tonight are two different ordinances that clean up our landscaping ordinance or our landscaping regulations in our zoning code. The intent of this, again, is just more cohesion, better accessibility, and it being user-friendly. For the most part, the landscaping regulations stayed the same. Reorganizing and condensing and eliminating a lot of duplicity really went a long way with the landscaping regulations. At their July 9th meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the draft ordinance, held public hearing, directed staff to make some changes, and at their last meeting on August 13th, they made recommendation that the City Council approve the two enclosed ordinances, 757 and 758. Staff's prepared those for you. You can make one motion or make them both together or individually, but staff and the Planning Commission are recommending you approve ordinance 757 and 758. Both of them pertaining to the landscape regulations. Any questions?
Council, any questions?
It's just one, without having read all the changes line for line, what would you say would be the biggest change besides just the layout of it? Any significant change that homeowners or developers should be aware of?
So sure, that's a great question. I think the biggest change is that we will require less landscaping. Our landscaping ordinances, as they sit right now, are pretty excessive in terms of the quantity of plant materials that we're asking for. We have not had a development that has been able to meet our landscaping regulations without necessarily being over landscaped. Now, I do see Council Member Miller looking at me kind of side-eyed. We do have provisions in our current ordinance and our future ordinance that do allow for some flexibility without having to go through the variance process. If it seems like a development site is over-landscaped or under-landscaped, we can ask for more. But that was a big thing, was just taking those standards down a notch, not excessively, but to make it a little bit more less burdensome. I think our development sites will still be well landscaped, well designed, and will still have all of the very nice features we want in our new developments, maybe just without necessarily being over the top regulated.
Maybe one follow-up question. I had the opportunity to get out in the field last week and visited Castlewood, and just having a conversation with the folks at the table about the loss of trees out there. Is this new ordinances as written give us the flexibility that if there was a development that maybe it was going to be over landscaped, that they could pivot some of that landscape to, like, say, a park that's in desperate need of trees?
We do have provisions in the code that if somebody did not meet the landscape regulations, so in a circumstance maybe where woodlands were being removed in excess, then instead of replacement, they can pay fees in lieu of the actual mitigation or landscaping requirements. Right now, we do have a fund in the Park Capital Fund that the tree mitigation is specific for tree mitigation in public places.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Any other questions? I appreciate the time put into this and revisiting this, because, you know, you do see, especially in some of these commercial properties where you're required to put trees in that, but then signage, and then when those trees, the landscape get larger, then you're blocking signage, and so I appreciate this and the fact that the thought that we're a little over landscaped in some areas and being able to be flexible there. With that, is anyone going to make a motion?
I would make a motion to approve, excuse me, ordinance number 757 and ordinance number 758 pertaining to the landscaping regulations in the city of Forest Lake.
I'll second.
Second, we have a motion, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So 8B, Public Works Steering Committee, and Mark.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this item, of course, could just as well be handled by Dave, but the two of us are sort of engaging with the architects now that we have that contract in the works here, and want to get rolling on design. Obviously, this is a big project for our community, and we want to make sure that there's proper allowance for stakeholder input. And we started to think through who a group of stakeholders would be, and, you know, realize that we have some excellent resources on some of our boards, and have kind of handpicked a couple of folks from there that have some expertise in the things we're wanting to talk about, and came up with this list here just that we thought would be appropriate for a stakeholder group, consisting of 2 council members, a member from each of the committees, Public Works Director, obviously Dave, and myself, and then a number of people from the Public Works, various divisions of the Public Works Department, and including the lead mechanic as well. So we're here to see if the council has any other input as to what a stakeholder group might look like. We could certainly add, you know, members at large from the public or something like that if we found somebody, but wanted to keep the number, you know, somewhat reasonable too, so we're not, you know, too many people. Becomes a little difficult to wrangle schedules and all that kind of stuff too. But otherwise, this is our proposed roster, and we would ask the council for suggestions as to how that might look. So,
Any thoughts initially on how many times this group would meet?
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, probably monthly or so. I think depends on how swift we're moving through design work. I think it's, rather than timeline basis, it's going to be more about design inflection points. So when we get to a certain point and have a major decision to make, you know, are we going to have a dog park associated with it? Like, we looked at one option, you know, or, you know, we start to lay out the site. How much of that northwest corner can we carve off? Here's an option, here's an option. So some design inflection points will be important spots. But yeah, we'll try to obviously respect these folks' time. They're all people who are giving time already. So certainly we're not going to meet weekly or anything like that. So.
Thoughts on this? Are you looking for volunteers from the council tonight on the TBD, or is that?
I think we could wait as long as, you know, as long as we want to just endorse this structure, we could move forward with it. I think at the next Planning and Zoning Commission and at the next committee meetings, we could have those committees endorse either our suggestion or their suggestion as to who a representative would be. And then council could either do that tonight or take some time to think about it and do it at the next meeting.
I assume these are daytime meetings with a number of staff members on the steering committee?
We're flexible. I think we could do like a late afternoon type of arrangement. I know the number of the Public Works guys do typically get off at 3 o'clock or so. But, you know, we'll remain flexible and try to work that out.
Any additional thoughts, Dave, on the,
Just looking at it, we probably should get community development on there. Just department, just if we're talking about dog parks and expanding some parcels there that involved at some point. Popped in my mind right now that we should probably have them in there.
yeah, that probably makes sense. Do you,
Yeah.
is that then, would you, Mark, suggest that we take one from here and then add that, or just an additional?
I think we just add an additional person from either Abby or her staff. And, you know, and I think just probably with the staff part too, we'll mix and match depending on what the topic of conversation is. I mean, once the site layout is put together, does Abby's team care how the interior of the building lays out? Probably not, right? And to some degree, maybe Dave's staff doesn't as much care about the commercial site in the northwest corner, maybe. So there might not be, you know, we'll judge that as the topics come up, you know, whether or not all the staff needs to be in attendance.
Well, so serving on a similar committee when we did this building here and being able to have that input from a broad spectrum of people was, I think, helpful and helped design this building to be as good as it turned out. And so I think this is a great idea. Is there anyone, no commitments tonight, but anyone consider wanting to be involved, more intimately involved in this process?
I'd be willing to.
Anyone else? I'm more than willing to do so. So if, maybe that just makes it easier if it's myself and Councilmember Larson, we can make that decision here tonight and approve this. So with that, does anyone want to make a motion? Are we looking for a motion to accept
Could
this?
certainly make a motion to accept the structure with the two of you as appointees.
I'll make a motion to authorize the formation of the ad hoc committee to be referred to as the Public Works Building Steering Committee, consisting of the individuals named above, as well as a member of the Community Development Department, with Council Members Larson and Mayor Roberts filling the council's posts or spots.
There's a second.
I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 8C, median refresh project. Dave?
Yep, so back in June, council approved plans and specs and going out to bid for phase 1 of the median refresh project. Final completion of the plans took till about middle of July, and the bids went out about mid-July. So August 14th, the final bids came in. There was 2 bidders. They were sent out about 6 or 7. A lot of them were just full for the year. I think we learned from this that we probably want to do a spring planting or do something more in the spring to not try to get, you know, more competitive bids. But regardless, we got 2 bids in. Our budget was our budget was $145,000. Engineer estimate was $108,000, and low bid came in at $113,000. Most of that was wrapped up in traffic control, and then we didn't anticipate that every contractor quoted it as removing all the irrigation out of the boulevard and then replacing it back in. So that they just work around that. So those 2 costs pretty much equals back up to that engineer estimate. What we're looking for tonight is approval to do that phase 1 of the project. That would start in September 15th, I believe the start date was, and then final completion October 31st. I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Dave or anyone? Staff? So you look at these numbers and you might think median, just landscape, but as Dave mentioned, there's, you know, a lot of irrigation, there's concrete, there's a lot of hardscape stuff that's going on here, other than just plant material.
Yeah, I could have brought it back up, I mean, but council's gone through this numerous of times of all the concrete we added, irrigation changes, all that stuff, so I think you guys are all pretty much aware of, sounds like a lot of money, but for the work that's involved, it's,
Make a motion to approve the awarding the median refresh project Phase 1 to Landbridge Ecological Inc.
I'll second.
In a second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are in the discussion part here. As mentioned, 9A is removed from the agenda, so we'll go to 9B, strategic planning process. Mark.
Mr. Mayor and Council, you know, one of the things that when I came on board 6 months ago, obviously wanted to take a little time to get my feet underneath me and learn a little bit more about the city and the history of some of our plans and programs that we've had in place. And I feel like now at this point, 6 months in, that I have enough of a background and have established enough of the history and so forth to begin to execute a strategic planning process. Oftentimes, cities will engage in this sort of midwinter and come out of it in the spring with a strategic plan. I kind of like the idea of starting in the fall and starting January 1, kind of hitting the ground running a little bit more. And I think the timing of that kind of works out just in terms of our hiring process. In the next 3 weeks, we're gonna have 3 new employees here. We've got a couple months for them to get acquainted and get on board. And I think, as you can see from the schedule I've laid out, we would still be able to, you know, begin that process now. And then January 1, when I say be up and running, I really mean be ready to present something to the public and get a little bit of public engagement going. And then, you know, that spring timeframe, Q2, sort of March, April, May, be able to really start rolling out the implementation of strategic goals and that kind of thing. So I want everyone to understand too that this doesn't mean that until we get this in place, we're doing nothing. This, you know, there's always that sort of adage of you go to war with what you have, not to war here, but you're doing things as you go, right? And there's a necessity to doing that. But I do think it is valuable to step back and take a strategic look at what we're doing and why are we doing what we're doing, and are there better ways to do what we're doing? And so I think it's a great thing to get going here, to have a little focus to our discussions and to our goal setting. So if anyone has comments on this schedule, I'd be glad to take them, and or any sort of the elements of how we approach this. You know, I think one of the staff suggestions after I kind of put this to the department heads was, do we have sort of a section ahead of Q4 here, or in Q4, where we do some public engagement ahead of our formulation? So do we ask the community through some sort of community survey or something, what are your priorities in town? And I think that's the age-old question I always, as an engineer, Ryan knows this well too, like, do you bring a project to the community and say, well, we haven't really discussed anything or figured anything out, what do you think? And then they sort of scratch their head and look at you like, well, I don't know what to comment on. Or do you bring it to them and then they look at you and say, well, it looks like everything's already been decided, what's my input worth, right? So it's a very delicate balance as to when the appropriate time to engage the public is. And I think maybe the answer is at all times, right? So maybe there's a little bit of before engagement, maybe there's a little bit after, you know, and by after, I mean after we've had a first draft of it to look at. So I'm certainly open to squeezing a little bit of that into that Q4 timeframe, as well as getting some public feedback on just very high-level general goals. So that's the only maybe sort of tweak I would have to this. Otherwise, I'm just sort of looking for a general endorsement of this timeline, and then we would bring back specific actions, you know, as we go forward here. And this is discussion, so we're not looking for a motion necessarily here, but.
So when you say retreat, what can you paint a picture of what that would entail?
You know, in other communities, it's just been simply a different venue, just to clear the mind of, being in this room and, or one of our little conference rooms, have a little bit more relaxed atmosphere. It's still an open to the public meeting. I've had even members of the public sit through a 6-hour retreat at another community. So yeah, you just pick a venue in town that has some meeting space, get a little bit more relaxed and have a little bit more casual and forthright conversations about goals and a little less structure sometimes. We will work in some structures sometimes. We'll, have sometimes a little bit of educational background on some of the stuff that city departments do. And then sometimes you'll do a little bit of get to know you type stuff, icebreaker type stuff. It's a little bit of a chance for the council to get to know each other a little bit more. Obviously, some of you have long-standing relationships, others don't. And, but at the very least, sometimes it's an opportunity to say, some of the questions I've seen as icebreakers, why did you get on council? What motivated you to run? What bothers you? What keeps you up at night? Those type of questions, just so we can all sort of get that stuff out on the table and start to talk through some of those things. So usually it's a combination of a lot of that stuff where it's a little bit of get to know you, feel good stuff, and then it's a little bit of background information, and then a little bit of strategic thought. And generally coming out of it, you might have a few topics that we might want to reconvene, maybe not at a retreat, an all-day retreat type session, but just at a special workshop or something like of that nature.
Thank you.
Questions? Do you envision hiring someone or having someone from the outside to facilitate this?
Yeah, I told staff the other day, I'm still very much 50-50 on that. I think it can be very valuable. It can be a nice lift off of staff's shoulders to not have to go through the machinations of producing documents and churning out, minutes and gathering thoughts and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I do want this to be heavily staff-led and, not just the expenditure part of it, but just making sure that we're all bought in and are all doing the work to make sure that this is a plan that staff is fully behind and isn't sort of led in a direction that a consultant might want to lead it, Obviously, you're still in control of that consultant, but you know what I mean. Sometimes there's just different perspectives that come forward. And so I could go either way. If anyone felt strongly or had a recommendation on a consultant they've used, we'd certainly take that. I've been exploring a couple different consultants. I want to have that option ready for you as we get to that point. So I haven't solicited proposals yet, but I've talked to a few consultants already about the possibility of this, so.
Thoughts on that piece of it, council?
And sometimes it is nice to just have a third-party facilitator, and if they're good at their job, that's all they're doing is facilitating, right? And they're not interjecting their opinion so much as just being the one to kind of be the intermediary and things moving, that kind of thing, so.
I would be, I'd be open to that. I think, and I don't know if there would be, maybe it's a city administrator from a neighboring city that's in this, that we're not spending a ton of money for consultant fees, but to just lead that and be that third party removed and not so intimately involved in what, all of our thoughts are, but, or just get some pricing, maybe next step on something like that. I think for, maybe other than yourself, but for the staff to be really heavily involved, which I'd want them to be participating, but actually presenting might be heavy lift for that at this point, but.
It's appreciated, thank you.
So I guess first question, are we in favor of this plan? And if so, get some pricing on having someone lead that potentially.
Laid out well.
Off direction?
It's enough, yeah, and just, in the memo, I think it's hard for me to remember sometimes what's in the memo, what's just in my head, but I think I talked about just the timing of this being after we adopt the preliminary budget, right? There's really no time, obviously, between now and adopting this preliminary budget to have any sort of strategic discussion, but we're gonna get there, adopt a preliminary budget, and then it's a chance for us to take a deep breath, right, and say, okay, that's behind us. That was a tough goal, but to get there, obviously, we've spent months talking about a budget. You get there and then I think that'll be a nice framing part of our discussion. Here's our budget that we've adopted as a preliminary budget. Where do we go from there? What can we do within that budget for next year? What might, this isn't necessarily just I say strategic planning process for 2026. That doesn't mean we're gonna do a 1-year strategic plan, right? This is probably a 3 to 5 year plan, where we have some much longer, long view goals. And so, some of those things we'll be thinking about what can we do within our budget, but we're also gonna look at that 10-year plan, see the obstacles or opportunities that we have in that plan, and what can we do within that framework. And so I think that'll be a nice, timing. That's that October timeframe for a retreat where we can say, all right, we just came off the budget cycle here. Let's regroup and see what we have going forward, so.
How about the question as to when to bring public input in? Thoughts around that, council, before, during, after?
I mean, we can spin up a survey or, some engagement piece beforehand. It doesn't hurt to put that out to the public. I think Mark's probably onto something where, their feedback might be a little bit ambiguous versus if we bring forward, hey, here's what we're thinking, are we on track or not? At least that gives them some boundaries in which to react to. So, if we can spin up something super high level beforehand, it doesn't hurt, but I think we should expect our greatest feedback and look for our greatest feedback once we kind of give them, a picture to color in.
I think you hit on something there, maybe in that we get the process starting, but through that, in the middle of that process, when there's maybe some direction from us, that we put that out and make sure that we're tracking with what the community feels we should be working on. Might be a good thought process. And that brings up a bigger question as to surveys in general. Councilmember Erickson mentioned going out to Castlewood, and we've got a big expense there in the next couple of years. And so one of those questions to the public is, do we want to continue to invest into this municipal golf course, and what does that look like? And so questions like that might be a separate survey, but just surveys in general and trying to get as much interaction with the residents. So this could be the start of that. Okay, that's enough direction then.
That's enough, yeah.
9C, naming rights for city buildings. Dave.
Yeah, so we're at the Parks Commission on Wednesday night, and a resident came up and asked clubhouse after Jim Trudeau. Perfectly said, I don't think we have a policy on this, and I don't know if that's something that the Parks Commission should be deciding. I think that's probably a city council decision or discussion to decide if they want to start putting naming rights on city buildings. So with that, I quick turn around and put a memo on here and just a discussion with council of if that's something council will entertain, if that's something council wants to stay away from. We've done memorials and done plaques. We just haven't really done. What does come to mind is the DePonte Airport, but there's a lot of history there just instead of looking for discussion, direction of what you want from staff to do.
You want to add anything to
Yeah,
add?
I mean, I can think of an example. In Hugo, they named the park there, Pete Peterson Park. There's a number of, I know in a former community I worked for, there was talk about naming picnic shelters, and you can get down to that level of stuff too, right? And like, as Dave mentioned, you have benches and trees that can be, or paver bricks and that kind of stuff. So there's a continuum of things, a way to honor people, and it's just a matter of whether or not you want to go that direction. And then as Dave mentioned in the memo, you could go all the way up to making it a revenue generation type of thing. Obviously, like, usually that's more for like an ice arena or something of that nature, but certainly an opportunity.
Yeah, this is a kind of a tough one because, you know, in this particular situation with, with Jim Trudeau and his connection to that golf course and all he did for this community in his time here as police chief and sheriff and on, the Lakes Youth Service Bureau. It kind of is a no-brainer for me if the family was on board with that this would be a very fitting memorial to Jim for everything he's done. You know, then that brings on the next question is, okay, for signage, is there money in a parks? So when you start going down that road, like what if this, then maybe a policy is the best way to do it. I think that potentially cities have to have policies in place like this, so not having to recreate the wheel. But I'm not also a big red tape person either. So you know, it's like, but we have issues sometimes with naming, you know, tree bunny plaques at the park and all that. And so it's a slippery slope, but
I think you have the right idea, though. I'd rather see that facility, especially in particular, rather than being named after a business or something like that, having it named after somebody who's put so much effort and detail into keeping that building and things alive for the community, I think is a good thing. And as far as like your signage, I bet you could probably get some of the people would be willing to have a fundraiser or something like that to raise money for whatever type of signage you'd like to put. Have a annual golfing event or something to raise money. Or something.
And that was kind of what was discussed at the Parks Commission meeting is naming your rights and memorials, right? So at that same meeting, they approved a memorial to be placed at the Flaw Fields or Fenway Fields for Al Hauge, and it was a bronze plaque that listed a bunch of things that he did and that it was his favorite spot, and they want that put there. And that was part of that discussion too, is naming it Al Hauge Fields mean more than having a plaque donated that when you walk into the clubhouse, there's a plaque that has, you know, Jim Trudeau with all of his accomplishments. You know, that's what you weigh out is, you name it, do people even understand what it's named, or is it more valuable to have a, you know, a plaque when you walk in there for somebody to go, okay, no, I understand, you know. It kind of went back and forth on that as well of, you know, what's more, does the name as important of, you know, having something there that actually lists out the accomplishments? We got down a rabbit's hole, and then let's let council decide this.
thanks.
Dave, with that plaque or whatever that you just described out at the fields, what budget covered that?
So the FLA paid for that. So they proposed it, they designed it, they brought it to the Parks Commission to get approval to get it. We have a memorial policy now with the city. They approved it and then let them place it there at FLA Fields.
Can you say more about that memorial policy?
Well, you guys approved it in
Okay.
June, so they recommended the council to approve it, but it spells out trees, benches,
Got it.
plaques, you name it, throughout the city of how you go about it, doing it, who's responsible for the cost, all that, those steps. So there's kind of a process now to being able to at least do that. So if we want to do these naming right things, that's what I would recommend if we want to go down this path, that we create a policy. So there is a policy that's black and white, that everything gets evaluated, you know, the same way. Instead of just kind of somebody comes up and says, I want to name it this, and then we say, okay, and then same thing with the memorials, that we just wanted that process of how this goes along.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100% that, well, there might be things like this clubhouse that feel kind of obvious. It's not going to be the only one. And so to have a policy in place that we can lean on, or future councils can lean on, and staff can lean on, it's absolutely the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think that there should be a policy, especially if we have the policy for the memorials. I think it only solidifies that we should have a policy for this as well, especially because it can get to be such gray area with people coming in, and Jim Trudeau is naming a person that the community knows well, but if it's someone who the community doesn't know well, would a council be like, oh no, we don't know that person? So I just, without a policy, to me, it could go down the path of who, based on who council knows, or who staff knows. So I think a policy would be the best direction to head down.
In this particular case, I think we were emailed by maybe the resident that had requested this back a number of years ago. There's nothing really other than just approaching the or the park commission. There hasn't been a formal request for this yet, right?
Because there's really no process of doing this other than the resident coming up and proposing that. So I think that's part of that policy, right, is here's the steps to do this. And like you said, it's who pays for it? Is there a petition? Is, what all, probably gonna have to be a workshop deal where we find a bunch of different cities that have these policies and then kind of what every time you say one thing, then it's 5 more questions on that one. So I think having a policy with black and white is the way to go if we want to go down that road of allowing people to name it. The other thing is if you do open it up, then it's going to be hard to say no to somebody if they want to name something and if they follow the policy that.
And maybe at the end of the day, our policy is that there is no naming rights. So, I mean, just.
Yep, that was my last sentence too, is, also just choose to not have a policy and we don't name anything. We allow memorials, we allow plaques to be put up, we allow trees, benches, all that. We just are not gonna let, our city buildings be named. So I mean, that's also an option.
Do we, I don't know, maybe on this particular request that came to the Parks Commission, and is there ability to go back to that individual, or if there's a group that's behind that, and ask if a memorial, some type of plaque similar to what they did out at Fenway is, suffice, or they'd be okay with that, or if they really do want a name, the actual name on the building, then there's probably gonna be a little bit of a delay to be able to review that and see if that could happen, and it may not end up being possible.
Yep, we can go back to them. I still need to know what you want me to do with naming rights. Do you want me to create some policies and look at that, or do we want to stick with that we're not going to be naming city buildings?
My opinion is, as just a council member, is we want to stay away from the naming rights. I think it's a very slippery slope. However, before we would go ahead and say yes, I think we have to come up with our conditions, our rules, how we're going to do that and what's all going to be involved. So at this point, I would say the plaque would be the only option, or the recognition program we have currently in place, until we, as a council, either decide we want to look at this and evaluate it and come up with a policy, or just say no. I think naming city buildings and city parks and things like that can become a very challenging thing, especially if it's maybe based on donations, more so than recognition or whatever. And there's, I think there's a lot of challenges with it personally, but it's my opinion.
So I don't think you're gonna get a hard answer here, Dave, where it's like, you probably want us to say, no, we're not gonna name buildings at all and be done. But I think a little more thought, because there could be some opportunities that we might miss out. And not that we can't change a policy in the future, but, if there are some naming rights where there's some revenue opportunities for the city, for a parks department or something, I wouldn't want to completely rule that out. So I think, that's just mine, but Kevin is leaning a different way, which is fine. But if you guys are thinking, what, let's not go down this road, I'm open to that too. I'm not hard set on it either way.
I guess personally, I'd rather maybe at a workshop, look at what are our peer communities, those that we usually benchmark against, where are they at on this? What have they done? Just so we're not, at least looking at the options. We may still end up saying, no, but I think it's at least worth the conversation.
Maybe not a full-fledged policy, but just some general parameters that other communities are using.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets tricky, because you probably have naming rights and then you have memorial names, right? So you could have name your company ball fields versus name your person ball field, and that may be just a petition that says, want this named after this individual, where name your company ball fields may be generating dollars for the parks. So the Councilmember Miller's point, I mean, that's where you get down that, which way do you go with that? I mean, are you trying to generate revenue, or are you trying to, name places after, memorials? And that's a whole, I'll work on it. Get it on a workshop.
Yeah, and this isn't, I don't think this is, with everything else going on, it's not something I think we need immediate attention to. I think maybe a response back to the individual saying, we've been more than open to do a memorial type plaque for the building right now, but we're just not prepared to make that decision. And sometime over the winter, if this works, we can just get some thoughts on what other cities doing and move forward that way.
We'll definitely reach back out to her and kind of let her know where we're at. I don't think she was assuming it was gonna get decided tonight, but just to kind of give her a heads up of where we're all at with that. I think I have enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Staff updates, we'll start with Jolene.
Just a quick update, we have our first human resources dedicated staff person starting this week. So I know I'm excited. I know a lot of our staff members are excited. So we'll be welcoming Wendy Peterson on Thursday. And then I'll also be conducting deputy clerk interviews this week as well. So big week in the administration department for hiring.
Great, Abby.
I just wanted to call out an item that was in the consent agenda for the general public, the Midcoast Border to Border grant that the council contributed to, dedicated funds to many years ago, but we're actually providing for. It did provide fiber internet connection to over 300 properties in the kind of southwest corner of Forest Lake that had either no reliable or unreliable service options. So it was a pretty big project that Midco did, and I think that many of our residents and businesses are going to benefit from or could benefit from.
Dave, anything else tonight?
Corn feed tomorrow night. So come on. We have 1,100 cobs of corn to give out, starting at 6 p.m. They'll probably get going a little bit earlier than that, but we have Parks Commission and beautification crew running the stand. So come down and get a bunch of volunteers. So stop out. Rockin' Hollywoods too. This is the last Arts in the Park for the year. So it's last grand finale of the year.
Great. Chief Peterson.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, no updates, but I just want to thank you for the nice tribute and recognition of Detective Josh Brown.
Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, I got 3 updates for you guys. Just keep in mind, the first one, I'm just the messenger. So I'm just going to read the email that I got for related to Highway 97 today, just so you guys have the same information that I have. Right now, we are stating that Highway 97 will be open from Everton to Trunk Highway 61 as a single lane in each direction by September 6th. The signal will not be operational at this time, so it will be an all-way stop until that is functional. Entire stretch of Trunk Highway 97 is anticipated to open by mid-November. Well, that's obviously a lot different changes than it was before I went on vacation, so I just wanted to relay that. I'll obviously be following up with some additional questions throughout the week on that schedule. South Water Tower, the logos have been completed, so just in time for football season, so that'll look really nice. North Shore Trail, we plan on paving base course on phase 3 into this week, maybe goes into early next week, just when they can get to it. And then we'll just have Phase 1 left on North Shore Trail. Remember, Phase 2 was Hayward Avenue. Phase 1 actually is by far the shortest phase, so that'll be a nice short phase to finish that. And then we'll start milling and reclaiming in Phase 1 on September 2nd, so after Labor Day. So everything should be paved along North Shore Drive for Labor Day weekend. So that'd be nice. That's what I have, unless you have any questions.
Then when will the, go back and do the final course lift?
We'll still gotta work through Phase 1 and get that base course paved, and then we'll pave everything all together when it's ready.
All yet.
Yep, correct.
And
No updates.
Mark?
Just a reminder that we do have the work session on Wednesday this week. That's a new schedule. The fire board meeting scheduled for Thursday has been canceled. Alan, I believe, just made that decision late this afternoon, and we'll be communicating that out to everybody else. Otherwise, no, I think as Jolene mentioned, we're happy to welcome one of our first new hires here on the administrative side, but also have two more that will join us in time before the next city council meeting. So you can imagine we're going to onboard three very important hires here, and we thank the council for their support and giving us those that help. So it's going to be a huge difference. Thank you.
Councilmember Miller?
No updates?
Councilmember Valento?
Nothing from me tonight.
Councilmember Erickson?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to attend Detective Josh's funeral, and it was just the stories and the people that shared from the front was just very, very moving. So your comments at the top of the hour were spot on. And then I also had the chance to meet with Dave and the folks running Castlewood Golf Course to get a tour of the work being done out there, which is very, very helpful as we start to consider budgets. So really appreciate the time they took. So thank you, Dave, too.
Larson?
Nothing to add tonight. Thank you.
I don't have any more to add, as far as those 2 points that Councilmember Erickson made. And I mentioned earlier, Castlewood, they're doing great things out there. There's 14,000 rounds of golf last year that was played, and they're on track to do that again. We started this week, right, Dave, some enhancements to a couple of the greens?
Yep, 3 drainage issues and a green expansion, so that's there this week.
So, long-term, a lot of money needs to be spent out there to keep that facility up to par. Feedback from the public would be really welcomed on that, but I think they're doing a great job, and it's, with 14,000 rounds, it's for sure the heaviest used park in the city, so we appreciate that partnership with them. So that is all we have now. We are going to go into a closed session. Is anyone willing to make that motion to go into closed session?
Sure. I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3A for the city administrator performance review. The closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the city council will reconvene the open portion of the regular meeting. And as there's no other items on the agenda, once back in session, the council will adjourn.
Motions are second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'll just make one other note that for those watching from home, we will not be videoing through this. When we get done with our closed session, we'll be coming back in here and adjourning the meeting. So we are in closed session.